Chief Francisco's attorney, CJ Czaia, believes the tasing was excessive.
And when they were tasering him, they knew they should not have gone to that extreme. If you have autism or a problem, this is not unusual for the way the kid would react.
The CJ Knows Show. Well, welcome back, man. It's exciting to be back, Henry. Great to see you again. We here at the CJ Knows Show like to inquire, inform, and inspire. So thank you and welcome. Today's show is going to be really special. We have an amazing guest, Stacey Hoagland. She runs everything about autism, lets us educate us on all this. But this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart, having met Francisco Diaz and what he's been through. And I realized that I just don't know anything or very little about people on the spectrum and autism. And I don't think the courts do either, or do most of law enforcement. And it's a huge, big, important topic. Henry, who is exactly Stacey? I think we need to introduce her to everybody.
Well, our guest today is Stacey Hoagland. She is the president of the Autism Society of Florida. She's much more than that, of course. She's a parent of a young man with autism. She is also a mediator, an educational advocate with Family Network on Disabilities. She's past editor of the Autism Notebook Magazine, statewide coordinator partners in policymaking. She's a trainer, consultant, interventionist, and she provides educational opportunities for parents and organizations. It goes on and on if I were just going to read this bio about her, because she's does a lot for a lot of people.
Well, welcome, Stacey. Thank you for being here. Please tell me a little bit about why you got into this, and how come you're a leader in this community?
Well, like most people who get involved, whatever the cause may be, it doesn't have to be autism, it could be anything. We had some personal experience. And so before I had my children, I actually worked for the school system. And so I had experience working with kids. So I had some semblance of knowledge of child development. And I kept going to my pediatrician that my son wasn't speaking. He was exhibiting these behaviors. He was not socially interested, so many things that are very characteristic for autism. And my pediatrician kept telling me things like, give him time. He's a boy. Boys develop later. Don't compare him to his brother. And it was a friend of mine who was an administrator at a school who came over, and she's like, something's up. And I go, yeah, I know. And I keep talking to my pediatrician, and he says to give it time. And she's like, well, you need to get in there and not take that anymore. So I went back and I said, he stood by it. He's like, I don't think so. I go, well, you cannot think so, but I need somebody else. So that was really my first experience at advocacy, because he wasn't going to give it to me. He was not going to send me for an evaluation with someone who knew more than he did. And it wasn't 5 minutes in a neurologist's office. I mean, my son showed all of the early signs of autism. So now, of course, looking back, I'm like, oh my goodness, how did even I wait until he was 2? So he was a little over 2 by the time we got that diagnosis. But I really found that even from the beginning, so many of us parents out there, we have to advocate to get a diagnosis. We have to advocate to get our kids what they need in school. We have to advocate to get jobs. We have to advocate for housing and transportation and just everything. So certainly our communities keep us plenty busy on having to advocate.
Well, I was very ignorant of this whole topic until I met Francisco and got involved in the criminal aspect of this, and how they treated him, abused him, and misused him, and misdiagnosed him in the sense of him being a criminal or deserving any of this. And then as I looked into it, I realized I heard the term spectrum. I heard the term Asperger's, by mom, autism, and I'm going, what are all these things? Can you give me a basic idea of, I hear the term spectrum. You're in this spectrum. Somebody's really bad, probably not. Explain to me how you understand this, because I certainly need to understand a little bit more about it.
Well, it's funny because the labels are a moving target. So just in my 27 years working inside this field, the names, the titles have changed so many different times that it can make anybody's head spin. Asperger's isn't even recognized any longer. Something called the DSM-4, or 5 actually now, that is where diagnoses are. And so Asperger's fell off when it moved from DSM-4 to DSM-5. And so now they include all of them in this spectrum diagnosis. And also now they've given them levels. So you have autism level 1, autism level 2, autism level 3. depending upon the needs that the individual has. But sometimes it's not really unusual, just like in Francisco. So his mom said autism, his mom said Asperger's when the
Right.
whole incident was happening. And so when we think about somebody who has Asperger's or whose parent has said they have Asperger's, generally speaking, you're seeing someone who can verbally communicate, who has some decent academic skills and abilities to be able to get a job. But sometimes those individuals suffer with the most significant mental health issues, anxiety, frustration, coping mechanisms.
Like
And
PTSD in a sense I've seen with some of these people. Does that make sense to you?
yeah, well, and this young person now has PTSD.
Right.
And, that would happen almost to any of us anyway. But imagine being a person that, because of your developmental disability, you don't really understand all the dynamics of what's happening in that situation. And then they throw you in a squad car and they take you somewhere away from your family, away from everything that you know, and away from your structured environment. And you're put in a place where, frankly, it's full of criminals, right? You're going to jail. And so
Well, one of the most harmless individuals just a wonderful young man. And the parents and the caregivers felt they were father was arrested for not having a valid driver's license or suspended license, and handcuffs and abuse and blah blah blah. He didn't realize what was really going on. I mean, I'm just very worried that he sat in the system for 3 weeks in the jail. Nobody identified his problems. The judge was not aware of any of this. They put a huge bond because the police officers only were after him. So we call battering a Leo, battering a law enforcement officer. They'll beat the hell out of you. You're going to get the charge, whether it's legit or not. A lot of times it is legitimate. I understand. I'm not saying all officers are bad. I never would say that, but there are some times when they aren't exactly very honest, and or they get too carried away with some. But they could have informed the courts. They could have informed the jails. They could inform, but I even think even if they did, there's no mechanism. I mean, I don't know. How does the bar know the people representing them, defending them? I mean, you have to have intent to do some of these crimes. You may not have an intent if you have autism or in the spectrum. And it's an area that we're not ready for this. We're not capable of understanding people in the spectrum. And I want to do training for my entire staff. I want to learn more about this, and then I want to help. I thought he told me there were people he ran into in the jail that he thought were on the spectrum. So I'm very concerned that justice is done, that things are done correctly, and people who need help need help. And you have an organization, right? I mean, you've been doing that. Not just you got involved because your son. I'm starting to get involved because of somebody like Francisco. What is it that you are part of, and how are you making a difference in our state?
Well, we do. I mean, we've trained over 20,000 police officers across the state, but we're constantly getting new officers coming in, those others retiring, moving out of state, moving on to other things. We have a team. So our organization has a team of trainers because we cover the whole state. So our lead is a husband and wife team. They have 2 boys that are identical twins.
Right.
So when you look at them, they're identical, but they both have autism, but they have very different types of autism. And so the boys are also very incremental to the training that we do. The dad, so Margie Headland, is on the board of the Autism Society. So she's my lead trainer. And her husband just retired from the Broward Sheriff's Office. So it's a beautiful thing because, cops talk to cops. It's a culture. It's its own community. So we love it when the officers, they're just much more open when they have somebody.
What are you doing? We train the officers. How about the courts, the judges, the attorneys that represent them? Are we doing enough of that?
I'm on the Broward Crime Commission, and so I'll just use that as an example. So we do tons of trainings through the Broward Crime Commission on a variety of topics, but we always make sure that we're covering autism, and we'll have child protective services, judges, attorneys, public defenders. I mean, you kind of name it. Anybody who's inside that field. And, I mean, across this nation, I've heard a figure of 67% of those that are in our penal system have some type of disability. So our jails in general, our prisons are loaded. They are not helping people for sure. And so it's just a very tragic situation when somebody is put in that. And let me just add one more thing, because pretty much across the board, when we talk about police officers, especially, it comes down to not having information. So they don't know, they haven't been taught, whatever it might be. And it's fear. Because I mean, I can relate to that. I mean, that's, they have to live in fear every day. When we do our trainings, we tell them we get it. When they share with us, the most dangerous place for us to go is up to the car window.
Well, I agree with you, but my concern is beyond the police. Okay, on the street, it's the police. But when you get incarcerated, when you're locked up, when you're thrown into the jail, that's a whole different level of people. When the officer, or when they present the arrested person in first appearance before the judge that's determining bond or where he should be or she be, they're not in our communities. Maybe Broward is more progressive, with all due respect, because they may be more progressive in Broward. And there are some counties that they review officers, they review this, that, and others don't. Most don't. There's no checks and balance in the system.
Stacy, is there any mandated training by statute in Florida or beyond?
No. So we are right now. Actually, I was in our state capitol on Monday, meeting with a couple legislators there, because we have a bill. So there's a bill that's going to be coming out this legislative session, so just a couple of weeks, and it will require police officers to be trained. There was a law that passed a couple of years ago that highly encouraged officer training, but it didn't require them to be. So we have this one right now. We have both sponsors on the House and on the Senate side, and we have a lot of political support for that right now. And
I will say that Chief Tokinger in Holmes Beach, when this happened, was one of the first to say, we need training. And he brought somebody up from South Florida, from Broward County, I think, even to train one of the police departments to review this. And I don't think it's the same everywhere.
Yeah. Well, we reach out to all of the sheriff's departments, all of the police departments, all of the fire. So we reach out to them, and our training is free. There are many people out there who provide these type of trainings, and that's their livelihood. So they charge for them, and it's really good. There's some good people out there. Our organization doesn't do that, because we never want finances to be a reason that you don't get trained.
Well, I think law enforcement is one aspect, but I know I was in the bar association of many I haven't seen anything on this. Nobody's presented anything. And we're the ones who defend the Franciscos of the world, and we don't know about it. And then the judges don't know about it. I in my communities anyway, everywhere I've been, they don't know about it. And for sure, their assistants who set the dates and times for bond hearings don't know about it. And then in the jails, when they come up to first appearance, nobody knows about it. And then they're housed in the same population. Nobody knows about it. So while we're doing a good job with some of the officers, if they're paying attention, the people that really have the pulse, the state attorneys, we met with Alex Compathrigus, a very good advocate and attorney, with Ed Brodsky in Manatee County, in Sarasota, Manatee, DeSoto County, very good state attorney. I used to go against him when we were young. I was a PD and he was a prosecutor. Now he's the head guy. We met with them, and Cynthia Evers, who is the right hand at that department, to educate this. So they're interested because their own assistant state attorneys are unaware of this. So the guys like us that work in the system, I have no clue, representing somebody like Francisco. If it wasn't for the compassion of Alex, who has a brother and sister who are on the bad end of the spectrum, this guy would have been housed and probably in jail or prison. I don't know. And that's a big problem I see from my perspective. While you're doing great, we need to do more. And it's not just the law enforcement, it's the whole system. Like, we should be speaking at every bar association. The judges get together. I mean, that's what we're really, I'm sorry to sound so passionate and crazy. It's like a new thing for me, but having witnessed seeing this guy tasered 5 times, beaten, and falsely charged him, I'm sorry. It just was wrong. But there are some fault on the parents too. And let me say this. How is an officer going to know they're dealing with somebody with autism if they're not told at the beginning? They were told later, but at the beginning. So I don't know. I heard there's a new law that you can register on your driver's that you have somebody with autism. But like, these are Hispanic people. They're not aware of that. They're totally unaware that they could do that. So there's a lot of work we can do, and through your organization, to continue to make these changes. I'm sure without you, this and your organization, I mean, there's no word, I mean, it's just quiet. You're with the guys that write the laws in Tallahassee this week, but I think we need to do more. I don't know what we can do, but I know what I'm trying to do is educate ourselves, or myself and the people around us. And I think you've got a great point. If anything, I'm learning through ESOL programs in school that, and I know my own daughter, who is now a young lady, when she had dyslexia, the schools really didn't identify it. She had to go through literally hell until we realized that she needed help, and we withdrew her from the public schools to help her. She went back later on. But if you have autism, if you're on the spectrum, if you have a problem, they're not going to help you with this, or they try to. They say they do, but are they really going to? I think this is so important across the board. I don't know. Man, please jump in, Stacey, because
as far as the education goes, I've been an educational advocate with a nonprofit for 25 years. And I am plenty busy and file lots of due process cases. And,
do you really?
Oh yeah, like.
Well, so I'm interested in that. What are you talking about? You filing due process cases? What are you doing?
Well, you know, we have federal laws. So we have the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act that requires a free and appropriate public education. So schools don't do that quite often. And so when a parent calls and says, whether it could be something my child's not getting the services that they need, or it's on their educational plan, but they're missing it. The teacher's not pulling the student, they're not receiving speech therapy, or whatever it is that's on that plan they're not getting. Well, you can't do that. You can't just decide that you don't want to do something. You have to follow the IEP, that educational plan. I mean, it could really be so many different things. And it's like a good and a bad thing. So FAPE, that free and appropriate public education, is different from kid to kid, because what's appropriate for this kid might be a little bit different for this one. So we always talk to the families to see, okay, what's going on? What are their needs? We read the psychoeducational evaluations, and we talk about, you know, what are the services that are going to meet this child's needs? And no two kids are the same. So you can't use a cookie cutter model. But when schools do not do what they should do, and the parent has really tried, and maybe they have an advocate who's gone with them and they've really tried to work with the school, but it's still not getting anywhere, that's when you have to file due process. Because, you know, it's interesting. So many people spend so much time fighting and battling for their children in something that they're legally entitled to, that they should have been getting all the while, but they're not. I tell parents all the time, the only person who's really losing out through this waiting process is your child, because we know, we have tons of data that tells us the humongous benefits of early intervention. And, you know, the responsibility of every single high school anywhere in this country is to do one of two things: either to get that kid ready for post-secondary education, so trade school, college, or to get them ready for a job. And when these kids sit and wallow in these programs without any true transition plan, that's also due process. And
well,
so,
I know
yeah.
Go ahead, Henry.
Let me just clarification, because some of the times you were saying we, but I know you're also a mediator and an advocate too. So I wasn't sure when you were talking, the Autism Society of Florida is filing these, or this is you in your role as a mediator and advocate, you suggested.
Yeah, that's me as the advocate. We did, I mean, we're just now starting. So, I mean, it's just like literally now beginning that the Autism Society of Florida is beginning an advocacy mentorship program where parents of children with autism will be mentors to parents who need that extra help when it comes to their school and dealing with their schools. But we're just at the beginning.
So the society does many things regarding autism, right? I mean, I've been pushing this idea with law enforcement, but there are other things that you're involved with, right? I mean, water safety, cameras. Explain that, cameras in the classrooms. What do you mean by that? What is that about?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, you can do an easy Google search to see the number of children that are abused by the people that we entrust our children to when we send them to school. And we being parents of kids with autism.
Right.
We expect that they're going to be cared for, that they're going to be protected, but yet there are videos because of one reason or another. So for instance, there's one video where the camera is facing on the playground, and a teacher literally ties the autistic student to her chair and sits on the chair. And then when she wanted to get up, she had the paraprofessional come and sit in the chair. And this is on video only because there was a camera on the playground. So as we advocated for that family and that situation, we said, imagine if that is what is happening to a child in broad daylight on the playground when she knows there's a camera there. Imagine what happens in that classroom when that door
Absolutely.
closes and she has a classroom filled with kids who don't verbally communicate. These are kids who are not going home and with the ability to be able to tell their mom and their dad what happened in the course of the day. So the particular bill that we're working on right now is to get cameras in special needs classrooms. So it's that for right now. And it's interesting because we actually had one legislator say, why don't you just ask for all classrooms? And my response to him was, because I want you guys to do it. And I think if we start here to where kids cannot defend themselves, they can't tell others what happened to them. I think we'll start there and then we'll broaden out. When it comes to cameras in classrooms, it's really not a matter of if we're going to do it or if we're not. It's when. There are other states that already have cameras in classrooms. And in Broward County, there was a pilot. So a couple years ago, 3 years ago, Senator Book was able to get a piece of legislation through for cameras in classrooms. But the legislature would only agree to a pilot program. She happened to be from Broward County. So they put it in Broward County. And when it sunsetted, because it was a 3-year pilot, so when it sunset last year, we thought, oh gosh, all right, there goes cameras. They're not going to do it anymore. It was actually the teachers union who said, we really like the cameras because we found cameras protect us too. And so Broward County is going to continue their cameras. They're writing the policies.
I hope they also put it in the hallways. My daughter years ago was in classroom. They had a camera. She picked up $5 from the kid that was on the floor. Looked like she kept it. They went after class and she gave the money back, but they accused her of stealing the money. And they kept her in a room for 3 hours and interrogated her. And that's because there was a camera in the classroom. So I would agree with you 100% with camera in the classrooms, but they also have to have
they
some
have
balance
them.
there too.
They have them. That came out of Parkland. So out of the Parkland shooting, all of the schools are supposed to have, now I'm not going around with a clipboard, but they're supposed to have them in all the hallways, the lunchroom, facing
That's
the
what
playground.
they should do. That's all I'm saying. It should be consistent across because abuse can happen anywhere, right? And
Stacey,
That should be in statute.
excuse me, Stacey, the student tied to the chair. Did you identify that as Manatee County, or is that another incident that occurred in Manatee County?
No,
We have that.
Yep, that's the one. That's the one.
So it's right down the street. That's probably not even 2 miles from us.
yeah, I mean, but there are a lot of shocking things from book burning to whatever. But I mean, my gosh, we got a lot to do here in the state. I mean, but again,
Let me just say, I love your idea with like the bar. I mean, but really, if you have contacts with them, that would be great because we've reached out to the bar and they haven't been very receptive.
well, I think we can make a lot of noise, and with attorneys like Alex Kampathrikas, and after this, I mean, you're talking about in the Latin community anyway, millions of hits, people watching, Telemundo interested. And I think it's a topic that, if you care about children, if you care about young people, if you care, and then, my gosh, I think you're dealing with a young adult now. I don't know. I can't imagine as a parent, depending on the severity of on the spectrum they are. I mean, how do you deal with that? I mean, there's so many, and then of course the people would say that, oh, it's not government's responsibility, or it's, I look at it's our community. What do you say about that?
CJ, let's take a break right now and close part 1 because I think we need a part 2.
Okay.
We were very content rich once we got rolling here.
I'm very curious about that because I want to know what we should do as government too.
We're
Remember
with
that.
Stacey Hoagland, the president of the Autism Society of Florida, and just look on the YouTube channel and click on episode 2 to get more of this.
Thank you.
The CJ Knows Show